What is up, ladies and gents? Welcome back to another Budgetmonk video. Here today I'm going to be showing you an extremely powerful strategy to begin the game as the nation of Ming. And what I'm doing here in the background right now is actually trying to sort out my estates to take the 150 of each monarch point. While that is going on, I want to explain the situation to you guys. Some of you might feel like you've been clickbaited because I showed Haishi, if that's how you pronounce their name, the Manchurian tribe in the north owning this territory. Now we do actually begin the game as Ming. This strategy, a lot of you might think this is out of the blue. Over here in Asia, if you have been following on my channel, I'm not the biggest Asian player of late. And the reason is because the strategy did not actually originate with me, but it instead originated with Marco Antonio. And for those of you who don't know Marco, he is, in my opinion, in terms of skill level, he is easily one of, if not the best player out there. And I reached out to him and asked if I could basically showcase his strategy because I was so impressed with it. And I'm going to be linking his YouTube channel and his Twitch channel down below, so make sure to check that out if you enjoy this video and are interested in that. But yeah, for those of you who don't know, he actually conquered the world in less than 100 years. In less than 100 years. Now, for those of you who think, how is that even possible? You might not understand the dynamic that hordes for quite some time, actually, I think ever since the Cossacks have been released, have been extremely overpowered in some ways, and the reason is because they can actually raise settlements, reducing the development and thereby reducing the coring cost, but they actually also generate monarch points when they do that, dramatically closing the gap on how much it is to actually conquer the world in terms of monarch points. But they also have CB with everything around them, and they also have extremely good ideas to actually conquer the world. Among other things, that is why hordes are so powerful, and there's been many people who have conquered the world in a very short period of time. However, Marco wanted to take it a step further, clearly, where he was thinking, what is the single most powerful starting strategy to actually, in this case, as Ming, for example, one of the more powerful nations in the game, actually convert your government type to a horde. Now, this cannot actually be done via conventional means, and that is exactly what the strategy entails, is starting as Ming and in the shortest and most efficient manner possible, actually becoming a horde nation, and obviously being in a stronger starting point than you would be if you had played that nation from the beginning of the game. So with no more further ado, let's get into some of the details. Alright, so the things that you're going to want to do right at the beginning of the game before you unpause the game is actually manage your advisors. Now, we managed the estates, that was the first thing, and we grabbed 150 of each monarch point, and naturally that's actually going to grab you the inflation reduction advisor, who is what I recommend you take for your admin slot because he is 50% cheaper. And you're going to want to actually amp him up to, and don't be afraid to take loans in order to do this, amp him up to a +5 advisor. Now, I have a bias for the trade and inflation advisor combo, so your diplomatic advisor is going to want to be a trade advisor in order to get the meantime to happen to generate the 250 diplo and or admin event. So go for the inflation and trade advisor is my recommendation. Now, with that being said, you also want a military advisor. Just take the best one possible, but you should be jamming all three of them up to +5 advisors, and that will take quite some loans. Now, the next move that you're going to want to do is basically ask Korchin and Jiang Sao, I don't know how to pronounce these Asian names, I apologize, the nations left and right of Haishi, for a tributary. Now, it will take about a day or two for your emissary to travel over there, but once they've become your tributary, your mission, you will actually get a mission to conquer a province of Haishi. Now, this prevents you from having to claim a CB there. But you will notice, if you were paying attention a moment ago, that I actually built a fort in every single one of Korea's provinces that are on the mainland. And by that I mean the exception of his island. And you're going to need to take copious amounts of loans to actually do this, but this is a crucial and fundamental part of the strategy. So make sure that you do that as well before you continue on with the game. Now, you will notice that I've gone to war here with Haishi, using that claim there in the beginning of the game, and I am actually not maintaining many of my forts, and the reason is I'm actually trying, despite our economy being in such rough shape due to our advisors being so high, etc., and all the things we're spending, despite the things that we're doing, I'm still trying to do my best to kind of manage the economy, so just keep that in mind. Now, in regards to the peace offer with Haishi, what we're actually going to want to do is basically fully annex him down to a one province minor status. And there are 2 provinces which are actually a total of 5 development at each individual province. These are actually the poorest provinces that Haishi actually has. And it's going to be important that when you annex his land, you're going to leave him with only a 5 development province as opposed to one of his more valuable development provinces. However, you are not going to leave him independent. You are going to annex his land directly and then ask him to be a vassal. Now, I want you guys to notice from my tributaries earlier on, I did actually ask them for diplomatic points. You can ask your tributaries to give you diplomatic points, and the reason that I'm prioritizing diplomatic points is because of the fact that this peace offer is going to cost a lot of diplomatic points. The next move, but believe it or not, is actually going to be to declare war on Korea. Now, he is our tributary, and it's definitely going to come at a cost, but ultimately it's going to be worth it. Now, something that's really interesting, guys, is because Korea is our tributary state, we can actually move our troops onto his land and declare war on him, and at all times they will have access, and therefore they will not actually be exiled at any stage. Now, part of the reason that we built a fort on every single one of his provinces is so in order to actually declare war on him right when they are about to finish. And we're actually going to obtain those forts within a month's time because the garrison has not built up. Now, this is an extremely cheesy strategy, but that's actually what I'm going to do next as I get all of my troops into position. It's going to be important. I actually remember making a small error here, but that's all right. It's going to be important to actually get enough troops on every single one of his provinces to siege down the forts, but then you also want to get enough troops on top of his armies to be ready to engage them in battle and defeat them right off the get-go as well. So it's going to be really important that you know the exact date in which the forts finish building, and what you're going to want to do is actually declare the war about 1 day ahead of them actually spawning. And once that happens, you're now in a state of war. They're building a fort in every single one of their provinces, and you're going to go ahead and actually individually take your stacks and move them to a neighboring province. This is going to allow the fort to finish, and then you're going to go back, let 1 day pass, pause it again, go back to each individual troop, and then stop them moving and station them within inside the province to actually siege down the fort. Now, as these forts flip over within a period of a month, you should be quickly occupying their entire country. This is when you actually give the occupation to your subject, Haishi. And when you do this, Haishi, with his 1 province minor 5 development, it is absolutely going to break his bank occupying so many of these forts. And the genius of this strategy here, what we're actually doing in the long term, is we're actually farming Liberty Desire on Haishi. So we're going to be taking loans if you need to, guys. You're going to be sitting on these occupations, and you're going to see Haishi, if you're paying attention, his bank is going to absolutely break, and you're going to be paying off his debt, which is farming Liberty Desire. And you want the modifier, if you mouse over his Liberty Desire, which will quickly become 0, you want the modifier to actually be near negative 1,400 from paying off the loans. Alrighty, so we're actually going to continue sitting here in this war with the occupations under Haishi, breaking his bank and paying off the debt for some time. And I just want to talk about the fact that we just declared a devastating war against our own subject. This would have reduced our stability all the way down to -3, and I think it costs a total of about 8 war exhaustion. Now, Keep in mind, this is not my strategy, guys. I'm trying to show you guys how to execute it, but it's actually Marco's strategy, and I'm not sure if I can do everything 100% efficiently. I definitely recommend that you guys play around with everything yourself if you were trying to achieve something as ambitious as like a world conquest within 100 years. But with that being said, I do find it crucially important, as painful as it is, to actually spend those monarch points stabilizing your country. It's just the price that you have to pay. Ultimately, it's going to be way more efficient to execute the strategy and pay this price regardless. But the reason you actually want to manage the stability of your country is because rebels are going to completely and utterly undermine the strategy in total. So with that being said, as you begin to make more and more occupations here, the mistake I was referring to is the fact that I wasn't sieging down one of the provinces, which means the garrison was able to continue, but also the fact that he had another little army, which I misjudged. I didn't have troops into position, so we were hindered a little bit, but the strategy is going along as planned regardless. With that being said, guys, I'm going to begin accumulating my troops which are not sieging down the actual Korean forts, which he did maintain himself. And I'm going to go ahead and take them around and try to clean up the rebels within inside our own borders. So we're going to be sitting in the same position here for some time while I fight these rebels, and that position is, of course, taking out loans, paying off Haishi's debt, and just farming Liberated Desire in regards to him. Going to continue fighting these rebels, and I want to talk for a moment about the actual peace deal with Korea. The actual peace deal should consist of only taking his money and maybe war reparations, something like that, but also you could eliminate his rivals, things like that for prestige. But I wouldn't worry about the fact that he was a tributary and now is not going to be a tributary, because of the fact that you can simply just ask him to be a tributary again, believe it or not. If you don't take any of his land or anything like that, then he doesn't actually hate you, surprisingly. He doesn't desire your province, and no aggressive expansion, so badly or anything like that, and you can just ask him to become your tributary again. Speaking of tributaries, guys, this is actually a point here, especially if you manage the rebels very well. At this point, while you're sitting at war and farming the Liberty Desire with Haishi, this is a point where you can actually go to war with other nations such as Orient. Now, this is something I didn't do because I'm more concerned about just demonstrating the principle behind the strategy itself. However, like I suggested in the thumbnail and the title of this video, you are actually going to have all of Ming's tributaries ultimately. So what this means is you can use the might of Ming right now to actually declare a war of force tributary on Orient, and you will ultimately have that as a tributary state when you actually flip to the Horde status. So definitely try to utilize your time productively. You guys have probably noticed that I actually haven't even bothered to core up the provinces that I've taken from Haishi, and the reason is because I actually intend to return them to him after we've done this tactic of farming Liberty Desire. We wanted to reduce him down. We wanted him to be our vassal, first of all, reduce him down to such a small size where owning these forts breaks his bank. And yeah, as far as the specifics and the details, those things are all up to you guys, what is most efficient, because, the reality is I did want to boost stability, and that stability was much more expensive because due to the fact that I had overextension. So definitely take that into consideration, but in my case, I didn't call them up until the war with Korea had ended, and then I handed them back to Aishi. Alrighty guys, so I'm really going to blitz through a lot of this content here before we go into the next major phase at a higher speed, and I'm going to talk about the specifics and what's important to take into consideration before we go on to the next phase. And now one thing is the fact that, guys, while we maintain our +5 advisors in like every slot, and while we're able to manage the tributaries and ask them for diplomatic or admin, for example, points, we want to actually tech up to tech 5 in every technology. And the reason is because, as you'll see in the future, we're going to be able to tech up much faster than Haishi otherwise would, whilst we are the nation of Ming. So with that in mind, you're going to find one of the advantages of this strategy is starting as Ming is you're going to be ahead of all of your neighbors in technology despite being a horde. But it's very important before we move on to the next phase that you're going to be at tech level 5. So while I wait for myself to tech up, and after handing off all of the cores back to Haishi, my absolute fundamental important thing, the thing that I'm focusing on within that window, that period of time, is to not only deal with the rebels that are on our land. Now keep in mind that we're not actually paying off Haishi's debt any longer, so we can hire mercenaries, for example, if that's what we desire. But it's actually going to be to reduce all unrest to 0. Okay, so we're going to do our absolute best to let our war exhaustion tick down, boost our stability if needed, but we want no rebel factions to actually be progressing, and that's quite important, as you guys will see as we continue on here. So one thing I highly recommend that you guys take into consideration, and it's something that I actually had to resort to, when I teched up to Tech 5 finally, I was able to actually fire my advisors because you're no longer going to need those points, and I was able to hire a unrest advisor, and that may be the extent that you guys have to go to, but also definitely station your troops in areas that are not, Confucian religion and so on, to eliminate all unrest and get all rebel factions below 0, essentially, or at the 0 mark. It's going to be very important. And I briefly want to mention the reasons why it actually took me about 14 years as opposed to 10 years, and one of those is waiting on that technology 5. Now, unfortunately, guys, my ruler did actually pass away, which loses some stability, and that stability costed me with the overextension about 140 admin to actually utilize. Now, on the other hand, I didn't get the beautiful event that you can get, and I have gotten while doing some tests. It's fairly reasonable to get that event that gives you 200 admin and 200 diplo if you actually have a inflation reduction and trade advisor, which is why I recommended it in the beginning of the game. So I had quite some bad luck here, guys, and I was limited by the fact that I was waiting on my tech. And hopefully, I recommend if you guys were really trying to utilize this strategy to its maximum potential, you would, make sure you had a good beginning of the game yourself before you continued on. And lastly, just before we get into the next phase, guys, once you've dealt with all your rebels and so on, I highly recommend, guys, that you take corruption, you debase your currency and go all the way up to 12 corruption, and that should give you a large stockpile of money, and then from that point take a good 3-4 loans to really accumulate a ton of money. Now you should have a ton of money, which does give you a buffer and kind of prevent you from going bankrupt via the taking out the money, debasing the currency to pay off loans if needed. Now you can also go bankrupt. It's not that big of an issue, but going bankrupt does actually create devastation within your provinces. But it's definitely going to be important that you actually have a huge pool of money, really break your economy to get a huge pool of money before going into the next phase. And what that phase consists of, as you're about to see, is going to the Subjects tab, and you're going to go ahead and begin to hand off via the Grant Province mechanic literally every single province you have to the nation of Haishi. Now, just like paying off his debt, this is going to accumulate you a lot of favor in him, right? He's going to, his liberty desire is going to be decreased based on every single province you give him. So that's what I'm doing right now, and we're going to go ahead and begin to speed through that. So just like a client state, at a later stage of the game, guys, we own the core on the provinces. We've already cored them up, so we can actually hand them off, and it's not going to create any overextension or anything of the sort inside our subject, the nation of Haishi. So what a glorious transformation here as we empower our vassal more and more. So as we take a glorious look at our empowered subject Haishi, we're going to go ahead and move into our next phase, which, as you can see, that's right, we're going to go ahead and use the Seize Land tab to request every single province that he has, of course, with the exception of his capital, which cannot be seized. So, laughably, let's speed through this to the point in which he's reduced back down to the bone. And of course, guys, all of this money, all of this time, these forts we've built, these wars, the monarch points, the stability hits that we've taken, has all been to farm that liberty desire so that we can seize his land back, which reduces liberty desire. And of course, you cannot seize land from a nation who hates you. And that is why we farm that liberty desire so hard, in order to grant him our whole country and then seize it all back. So, as just before we move into the next phase, which is going to be, believe it or not, attacking our own subject, which you're about to see, Haishi. This is going to have absolutely devastating effects, as you can see, massively increasing our war exhaustion, but also our stability. I wanted to mention, guys, that it is absolutely crucial that by some means you have a general who has at least one siege pip. Now, in my case, I was lucky in that regard. I was unlucky in other regards, but I was lucky in the regard that from my estate, I had 2 siege pips. But I do highly recommend resorting to creating your ruler, your heir, and or pumping all of your military points, whatever you have, into getting a general with siege pip. Because the reason is, guys, after seizing all of that land, we have a redonkulous amount of overextension, and that is going to cause pretty much our entire country to break. Now, it's going to take around 9 months for each of these rebel factions to progress, and that is basically the window that we have the opportunity to defeat Haishi in a war, which is realistic. Now, I made a crucial mistake myself, and that is that although I did have troops poised and ready to siege down his capital city, I should have all the troops you can see on the screen right now ready to actually assist in that siege. And the reason is because there's 1,000 troops in that fort total, and you're going to want to go ahead and just assault the fort if it gives you the opportunity to do so in order to guarantee that you finish that siege. So those troops down there should already have been moved up towards Haishi's capital. Now, if you took notice, that money that I accumulated before doing this, we actually placated each of our tributary states by bestowing them gifts, and that is so that they do not break being our tributary, while our Diplo reputation is absolutely garbage because of our overextension being so high. So this is a really clutch moment, guys. It's pretty crazy here, where these rebel factions are progressing massively every month, and I'm desperately trying to siege down Haishi in order to get out of this war. Now, the reason that these rebel factions, if any single one of them is successful, guys, it's going to completely break this game, is because you cannot release a nation if you do not occupy their territory. And I suppose a spoiler, but we're about to reveal that right now. That is exactly what I'm about to do. Once we have fully annexed Haishi, I intend to actually release him and play as him, as he now has core within my entire nation. Now, I just want to talk about the fact that this strategy can be exploited, if you will, even more, and one of the tactics is to bestow a tremendous amount of money to one of your tributaries and then cancel the tributaries, or you can do it to multiple tributaries, then cancel them, and then once you become Haishi, you will not have a truce with those nations, and you can go in and you can jack their money. There are many things and many ways this strategy can be advanced or refined to put you into the best position possible. Now, there we go. After releasing Haishi and playing as him, we are now Haishi, who owns all of Ming China with the exception of Beijing. And guess what? We're going to go ahead and declare war on independence war from Ming right now and fully annex him, and therefore take on all of his subjects, which are, of course, those tributaries. Now, I did have a little bit of a nasty surprise here when I did this. And that's the fact that we're not in the best shape economically or manpower, or we don't have any actual troops up. And I did actually have a war declared on me as we speed through this, as you'll see yourself. But thankfully, I was able to just pay them off here as I went in against Beijing, occupied it, and became the new, well, probably the world's leading power. So as we speed through to the end of this video, guys, that is the strategy in a nutshell. Hilarious, in my opinion. Absolutely awesome. And I want to talk about a couple last things, one of which is the fact that you can actually state up some of these high development states within Ming China for free, apparently, by actually utilizing this method. We own the core, and we don't even need to core them up or once we state them up. So absolutely hilarious. Huge shout out to Marco for this. Once again, this is his strategy, and absolutely awesome. I think it's laughable. It's pretty exploitative, but at the same time, it is, working within the parameters of the game. I suggest, guys, that there's probably going to be some fixes coming if this video gets any kind of notoriety, because this is extremely strong. It would be interesting to see if it lasts, actually, going to the next patch, the Rule Britannia patch, or if it is patched out at some stage. But once again, I'm going to be linking the links to Marco's content below in the description box. Feel free to check that out, and I really hope you guys enjoyed this video. It's something a little bit different, and I wish you the best of luck, and really hope that you guys enjoy your game if you follow in this footsteps. So you can see here that I've actually paid off Jiang Sao. I think that's the nation who actually declared war on me, and I'm about to make the occupation of Beijing here. He did occupy my own territory, but I'm going to quickly go up. And yeah, considering we have 100% in him, effectively, this is not going to last long. Thanks for watching, guys, and there it is, the strategy in a nutshell.